Welcome to Whisperwood Stories. Today, we read 3 stories from r/paranormal, a subreddit about all things beyond normal. Let's begin. Our first story is from phaedrus-jak. I want to share a story from nearly 3 years ago about traveling through Arizona near a reservation in hopes that your comments, questions, or similar experiences might help me dissect exactly what I experienced. It's a long one, but I'm going to try and be concise. I had spent the better part of a week camping in the desert and stopped at a Taco Bell in Arizona, on my way back to southern Utah. When I sat down, an older man with a limp walked over and asked if he could join me. I felt a little strange about it, but I hadn't spoken to anyone in days, and I thought I could use some conversation. He opened up to me, told me a bit about his past on the Navajo reservation, his estranged family, some verses from the Bible — he was a Christian convert — and how a local pastor at a church had been helping him get back on his feet. I was unsure if he was evangelizing me or maybe wanting some cash or something else completely. Then his story turned dark. He started talking about seeing ghosts and how he had been possessed by a demon twice, or maybe he still was. He wanted to show me videos on his phone of one of the spirits in his house. I watched a blurry streak of color that appeared in the middle of the kitchen on his phone screen, but it looked like there was some filter applied on the video, and it could have just been some sort of reflection or interference. I was unconvinced, but there was a feeling of uneasiness settling into my stomach. The story continued for a while, until I told him that I had to be heading home when he asked me for a ride to his house around the block. He had a limp, and it took him over 20 minutes to walk there on his own. Not to mention that it was cold, but it would only be a 3-minute drive for me. Again, I was very uneasy about this, but I said yes anyway. I mean, after hearing his story and the hurt and struggle in his voice, I felt compelled to at least help him in this very small way. He expressed a lot of gratitude when I said yes. He directed me down the main road when we started driving, away from the business strip into the local area and a very dark block of scattered homes and open desert. The uneasiness turned into dread, and I kept asking him over and over where his house was, and he would just say, "It's right up there." The thought that he may have a weapon crossed my mind as we were heading further away from traffic, lights, and people around the main strip of the town. We entered what looked like a rundown, abandoned subdivision of very small houses with the occasional working streetlight. I didn't see a single sign of occupancy. No lights in the houses, no cars in the driveway, until 2 silhouettes of men seemingly appeared from nowhere and walked across the street in front of me only to disappear again. I was terrified as I asked him again where his house was. He sensed my uneasiness and assured me that it was just around the corner. Sure enough, we turned the corner and there was a little house, same as all the others, with a light on inside. I could let him out here, he said, and he thanked me, said, "God bless you," and walked to the front door of the house that was supposedly occupied by spirits. It was a bizarre encounter, and I just have this feeling, even now, that I met this man for a reason that I do not understand. I would consider myself a pragmatic person of science more than one who looks to divine implications, but I'm appealing to those of you who are more familiar with the paranormal to weigh in here. I've questioned whether or not the man actually existed, or if I imagined him. In any case, I felt these strange feelings of unease, dread, sympathy, and anxiety that I have never experienced in the same way since. If you've made it this far, thanks for listening. Our next story is from Scott Venom. When I was around 10 years old, I would sleepwalk every single night. This lasted until I was around 14. I'd go to bed upstairs and wake up downstairs on the couch with my dog next to me. One time I woke up in our back garden, on a bench we had. On one particular night, I was about 13, I had the strangest experience I can remember, that, judging from other posts, could be an encounter with a demon. I was lying in bed half asleep when I heard 3 of the faintest knocks on the door downstairs. I don't know how I heard it, but my bedroom was on the front of the house, so maybe that's how. I think I looked at the clock and it was around 3:15 a.m. When I got up, my dog followed me downstairs to the front door. I opened it up to see a little girl. She had to be around 5 or 6. She had bright blue eyes and brown hair that was really short. I couldn't make out any other details about her face. It was a really dark night, but the faint glow of the streetlight seemed to make her eyes an even brighter shade of blue. I didn't recognize her from my school, nor from my neighborhood. I had never seen her before in my life. I remember being confused as to why she was at the front door, but before I could say anything, she asked, "Can I come in?" As she asked, she stepped closer, almost into the house, and my dog saw her and started growling. A little about my dog for context. He was a rescue Springer Spaniel called Benji, and the most gentle boy ever. He never barked or growled at anything unless he was trapped somewhere. The sanctuary we rescued him from said that he was probably hurt when he barked or growled, so that's why he never did. So he snarled and growled at this little girl and started backing up like he was going to attack. I had never seen Benji this angry, ever. All I remember saying to her is, "No, you can't come in, sorry, but you're upsetting Benji." She said, "Okay," and just turned around and walked away. I closed and locked the door. Turned around and Benji was wagging his tail. I looked out of the curtains just a couple of seconds after closing the door and couldn't see her anywhere, like she had just vanished. My house had views across the lot of the neighborhood, and there was nowhere she could have gone that fast that would have made her out of sight of the front window. After that night, Benji started sleeping with me, right by my bedroom door, as if to block me from sleepwalking again. Even though he had his own bed in the room next to my personal bed, he would sleep on the floor, in front of the door. I'm 26 now, but I still remember this encounter today. I don't know if it was a demon that night or what it was, but I feel like Benji protected me from something. Our last story is from Sparkletail. So I've been saying for years that I'm going to post some of my experiences on here, and the other day, I typed one of them out in response to something else, so, being very lazy, this is an ideal opportunity to copy and paste it. For years and years, but mostly when I was young, I've had all sorts of odd experiences. I've seen and heard things that I can't really explain in any sort of rational way. The most common thing I saw were flashbulbs in the form of faces. These images were super clear. They were always unhappy or tortured looking, and each came with a distinct feeling or signature, for want of a better description. The feeling was never good. As a teenager, I would usually see a sequence of them, sometimes 10 or 20 in a row. As I got older, the experiences stopped gradually. Nowadays, I see nothing at all. The other thing I would say as a disclaimer is that I am totally agnostic and sit on the fence when it comes to paranormal stuff. I used to be a true believer, but now I'm open to the fact that I may have well had some form of stress-related psychosis, as this is something that I've experienced when taking drugs before. However, I've also seen and felt things which I struggle to explain to this day. This is one of them. I live in an ancient village that's been populated since before the 13th century. When I first moved into my house, I had weird experiences from things disappearing. Waking up with night terrors, all sorts of stuff. For example, one night my partner and I had just fallen asleep. I was awoken first as a wasp had gotten into the room, into my top and around the collarbone, and stung me. I managed to get back to sleep, and then my partner woke up yelling because exactly the same thing had happened to them in exactly the same place. It was odd. One night after we'd both fallen asleep on the couch, I had a dream where I walked into the living room holding the hand of what I think was a little girl. And I actually saw my partner and myself asleep on the couch in front of me. Standing over me was a figure in a long, hooded brown robe with a long gray beard. He looked like he was deep in concentration and incanting something. I tried to wake myself up by hitting my body on the couch, but my hands didn't seem to make an impact. I started yelling for my partner, but he obviously couldn't hear me either. Somehow, I did wake up in a panic though. And this is going to sound bizarre, but I could feel something on me. Not physically, but something like another energy field is the best way I can describe it. Coincidentally, I'd been reading about clearing and calling on certain holy figures in panic. I yelled out that if whatever it was didn't go packing, I was calling for Jesus. And in that moment, I literally felt this thing, this force or whatever it was, bounce out of me. From then on, I was fully awake and stayed awake for several hours after. If that wasn't weird enough, 2 or 3 days later, I got one of those flashbulb images. It felt full of despair and dark. And it was him again. The same robed, bearded man from before. This happened probably 5 or 6 years ago. And literally only a couple of weeks ago, I remember a conversation that I'd had with an old lady when I first moved here. I commented on the slightly ancient sort of otherworldly feeling in this place. And she said yes, that there was a history of people seeing monks here before. I looked into it some more, and about 300 yards down the road from me, there is an ancient fortified church. It turns out that in ancient times, there were monks in this village, and there are historical records of this. I did used to wonder if I was seeing faces of real people who were stuck and couldn't move on. I guess this all could have just been a coincidence and my subconscious conjuring up stuff. But that physical sensation was real, that energy field. I don't know what it was, but it happened to me. All of these experiences together really do make me wonder. Thank you for listening to Whisperwood Stories. If you enjoyed, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe down below. Do you have a story that you'd like me to read here? Consider sending it to whisperwoodsubmissions@gmail.com. And don't forget to check out the original Reddit posts featured in this video. Thanks again for listening, and don't let the shadows get too close.